Welcome back, my friends, to the Derate the Hate podcast. I am Wilk from wilksworld.com, and this is going to be episode 19 of our DerateTheHate.com podcast. And the first thing I want to say is, what have you done today to make the world a better place? What have you done today to make your life a better life? Because ultimately, it is up to you to make your life a better life, and in turn, that's going to make the world a better place. So, bettering the world one attitude at a time, that is the mission of the Derate the Hate podcast. So, Derate the Hate podcast episode 19, and our episode today is going to be called Political Theater, the Real Hate Speech. And the reason I'm calling it Political Theater, the Real Hate Speech, is because I truly believe that it is our politicians and the media that drive a lot of the hate that we find between people, between us, between our neighbors, between different groups of people. If you missed last week's episode 18, which was Labels, Get Out of the Box, step back and listen to that one. Labels, get out of the box. A lot of times people are placing labels on us and expecting us to act in a certain way just because we fit into some demographic, some predefined demographic. So if you get a chance, step back, listen to all of our episodes. But last week's episode 18, was Labels, Get Out of the Box. This week's episode 19, Political Theater, the Real Hate Speech. Why do I call it the real hate speech? I'm not the type of person that believes that we need to be monitoring every word that every person says and trying to cancel out those with whom we disagree. I'm very much the opposite of that. But people talk a lot about hate speech, and they define hate speech as the type of speech that they disagree with. That's not hate speech, and what I believe is the real hate speech is when our politicians and our media get together. It seems like they're all in cahoots, and what they're doing is they're trying to drive a narrative by inflaming emotions with different types of rhetoric that get people all whooped up into a frenzy, and then that frenzy turns into maybe a violent demonstration, maybe a peaceful protest, and that's always encouraged. But a lot of times, especially in today's political climate, these peaceful protests have nefarious actors that get all whooped up in emotion, and they start to tear things apart and break things down and burn people's businesses and tear stuff up. So the rhetoric presented by our political people call them leaders. I don't call them leaders. I think they all work for us. But the politicians, the political class, and then the media, the mainstream media, are often doing stuff, presenting a type of rhetoric that is geared primarily towards whipping up people's emotions. And that, to me, is what the real hate speech is. But, when people are considering their political opponents enemies, and they're talking about them in terms of enemies, as somebody has recently done, or over the past 3.5-4 years, we've heard our president referred to as a Hitlerian dictator, or compared to Hitler on a regular basis. I mean, this is absolutely horrible, and to compare anybody, let alone our president, but to compare anybody in modern times in the United States of America in the United States political stage as a Hitlerian-style dictator is absolutely just an atrocious thing to say, because there is nobody on the modern political stage that is the kind of evil that a Hitlerian style or a Hitler type person was. And it does a huge disservice to those that suffered under the Hitlerian regime in Germany back in the 1930s and 40s. It's a disgusting slap in the face to those people who did suffer under that regime. Or talking about healthcare and saying they're going to push grandma off a cliff or those kind of things. Those are all meant to whip up emotions, and they're just a disgusting disgusting way of doing things, and it leads to anger. I mean, a couple years ago we saw a domestic terrorist shoot up a baseball practice with some senators. And we had some people shot and nearly killed out of that situation, strictly because of political rhetoric that is whipped up in the media and amongst politicians. I mean, quite honestly, I want you to think about something. When it comes to a lot of the legislation, a lot of the bills that they're working on, a lot of the rules that we as citizens in this country have to live by, a lot of these things are so unbelievably involved, so many pages. I mean, you got 2,000-3,000 page bills, all kinds of legalese that most people will never, ever even, I don't think the politicians, quite honestly, ever even read them. And they know people. I mean, they count on people not reading this stuff, and if they do read it, they don't understand it. So what do they do? What do they do? Try to drum up support for their cause or their particular thing? They try to inflame people's emotions with a certain type of rhetoric. And why do they do it? Well, quite honestly, the rhetoric that they're using, and we probably live in the most polarized times that this country has seen in 155 years. But the reality of it is, they're using this type of rhetoric to promote division. I mean, and I'm not talking about just one side. I mean, I believe that the vast majority of it comes from one side, and the DerateTheHate.com podcast is by no means meant to be political, and that's not what I'm going to do, and I'm certainly going to do my best always to leave out specifics when it comes to political agendas or political positions, but the fact is so many politicians nowadays, and it is on both sides. I'm not going to claim it's all on one side, but a lot of the rhetoric that's thrown out there is meant to inflame emotions. And if you've ever listened to a lot of the stuff that I talk about, I firmly believe that most decisions that are based on emotions end up in bad decisions and often end up in unintended consequences. So, I personally, I one of the prayers that I say every day and I look for is I look to God for the ability to give me the strength to make decisions not based on feelings or emotions, but based on logic, common sense, and facts. And anyone who's spent any time listening to any of the major political mouthpieces or most of the mainstream media now leans very much closer to one side than the other, but that's neither here nor there. A lot of times the media is very much in cahoots with the politicians, and they are all drumming up this political division through emotional rhetoric, and that emotional rhetoric is oftentimes meant to create division. It's meant to get people pitted against each other. And what we're seeing nowadays, like I said, we are living in some of the most politically polarized times and that we've seen in 155 years. And what we're seeing now is a lot of civil unrest. We're seeing riots daily in some of our biggest cities. We're seeing people's businesses burned, people's livelihoods completely destroyed. And I certainly cannot do this podcast without saying that I think the politicians and the media are complicit in much of that violence and unrest. And the damage very much falls on those politicians. I'm not going to say that all politicians are bad. I'm not going to say that all the media is bad. But I will say that those politicians and media that are always trying to drum up division through divisive rhetoric, interjecting the ideas of racism and systemic racism and gender warfare and class warfare into everything, it's not helpful. It's not a reality, and it's not helpful. But they do it, again, to be divisive, to get people pitted against each other. So yes, I truly believe the politicians and their cronies in the media are are very much complicit in the violence and unrest that's going on. I believe that goal of their demagogic attacks on individuals or individual ideas or different ideas, I think that those demagogic attacks are very much meant to divide, and they are very much complicit in the damage and the civil unrest that we're seeing nowadays. If a politician is relying on inflamed emotions rather than a substantive argument to get their point across, I believe that's very. It's very damaging. It's very damaging to our country. It's damaging to the people that depend on a government to provide a security structure for the people. It's horrible. But I think that they depend on that. I think that they depend on that divisive rhetoric. I think that they do it on purpose. Number one, like I said, to divide. It's meant to divide the people. And it's also meant to get people swayed to their side, because they're doing it for a couple reasons. And here I'm just going to break it down. And this is my opinion. This is what I believe. But I think they do it for a couple reasons. They know that their 2,000-page bills that they write up are stuff that people are never going to read. They're never going to read. So how do they get their point across? How do they get people to come to their side? What do? Drum up some divisive rhetoric. They drum up something to whip up emotions in the attempt to get people to hate the other side so much that they're going to vote for them. Why do they want to? I mean, the media and politicians do things for two reasons. The media does it for ratings. Politicians do it for votes. It's the way that they keep their jobs. It's the way that they do things. They know people are not going to read these 2,000-page bills, and they've got so many things thrown into these bills that they find the most emotional triggering things, and they talk about them to try and sway people to their sides. It's 2,000 pages. It's all filled with legalese. Nobody's really going to understand what these topics are, so they do everything they can to whip up people's emotions. I'll give you a perfect example, something that is very much in the news nowadays. It's very much a hot topic, and what they're talking about today is voter suppression. Voter suppression. You got one side that's talking about people always trying to suppress the vote of a minority. It's an absolute lie. It's always been a lie. We live in one of the most free countries, the freest countries in the world, with one of the smallest voter turnouts on the planet. Why? Because people are sick and tired of politics. They look at politics. They see how divisive it is. It makes them sick to their stomach. The reason people don't turn out to vote is not because they don't have the ability to vote. It's because they look at the politics and they're so sickened by what's going on, or they frankly just don't know how they're going to vote because there's so much involved, and they can't look at these bills so they don't feel like they're an informed voter. Again, that is why politicians do everything they can to inflame emotions, because they know that their actual topics are not going to sway people to their side, so they count on emotions. Again, like I've said, emotions, if you're making your decisions based on emotions, chances are you're going to make the decision, the wrong decision, more times than not. They do it to fuel division. Real reasons for low voter turnout, like I said, people are disgusted by the political theater. People don't know the real facts. And frankly, in a free country, people just want to be left alone. You know, these politicians act like the sun rises and sets upon them, and the media does the same thing. They feel like the sun rises and sets upon their existence. But the vast majority of the people in this country, they just want to be left alone. They just want to be left alone. They want to live their lives. They want to be free. They want to do the stuff that they do. And all this political theater and whipping people up into a frenzy and an emotional tirade is stuff that they don't want to deal with. Therefore, that's why you get the political. That's why you get the low voter turnout. It's not because of any kind of political suppression or voter suppression, like some would have you believe. That's just a small example of this political theater and the divisiveness and the hatefulness that comes out of it. So the real damage that I'm talking about now with this political theater and why I call it the real hate speech is because I have seen far too many times lately families pitted against families, mothers pitted against fathers, sons and daughters pitted against their parents, cousins against cousins, friends, lifelong friends that are no longer friends and they won't speak to each other, all because of political theater, the real hate speech, the hate speech that has taken things to a new level in this era of divisiveness, and it's really got to stop. We have to get back to a point where we can civilly disagree on things and move on with our real life, with the real people that are in front of us all the time, not some faraway politician who should have very little effect on our daily lives and very little effect on the way we treat the people around us. So just take it for what it's worth. Political theater, it's all just theater, and it is the real hate speech. So now I'm going to dive into, okay, that's a bunch of negative. Take it for what it's worth, but don't let it ruin your lives. Now I want to dive into the feel-good story from this week. Comes from Lake Winnipesaukee up in New Hampshire. A gentleman was up there visiting some friends at the Dockham Shore Estates on Lake Winnipesaukee. This Brady Libby, he was out there, saw somebody struggling out in the water. Turns out it was a 71-year-old man had gotten too far out in the water, and he was fighting for his life. And Mr. Libby jumped into action, swam over to him, got underneath him, lifted him up, got his head above water, and got him to shore in time to save the man's life. So not all heroes wear capes. This is something that he wouldn't have had to do. It's great to see ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and just a fantastic thing. So way to go, Brady Libby, up there in New Hampshire. It's a fantastic thing that you did, and the whole state of New Hampshire is gonna award you with a hero award. So, hopefully people all over the world now will hear about it because it's on the Derate the Hate podcast. So, anyways, excellent job. Congratulations for doing a job well done. And with that, I'm gonna wrap things up this week. I hope everybody realizes that there's a lot out there, a lot of goodness out there, and it's really up to you to accentuate that goodness in your life and bring it into the lives of other people. So when you do get back out there and you get amongst the people, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything that you've got, and remember, it's ultimately up to you to make each and every single day the day that you want it to be. So from all of us here at Wilkes World, check us out on Facebook, look us up, follow the Derate the Hate podcast on Facebook. But we're going to back on out of here, and we'll catch you next week.